Good morning, distinguished guests and fellow colleagues. My name is Nuning Wulandari. It's an honor to be here to present my study with the title State Asset Management Strategy, the Highest and Best Use Analysis to Increase Non-Tax Revenue. The Constitution of the 1945 Basic Law, Article 33, Paragraph 3, mandates that land, water, and natural resources contained therein must be under state control and are utilized for the maximum prosperity of the people. This constitutional mandate requires the government to manage Indonesian natural resources ultimately for the welfare of the entire society. The implementation of this mandate is reflected in the management of the state-owned assets that has been carried out in accordance with government accounting standards and adequate internal control system, as evidenced by obtaining an unqualified opinion on the central government financial statement. Optimal state asset management has great potential to support state finance through increased non-tax state revenue and maintains cost savings, according to reports from international institutions such as the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, United Nations, and in accordance with the previous research studies. Indonesia, state assets encompass various high-value resources that, if managed effectively, can support infrastructure development, improve public services, and strengthen economic competitiveness. Current state asset management is still not efficient and effective, and has been fully optimized, resulting in significant gaps identified in its management. Based on the aforementioned background, and to address the existing problem formulation, this research is focused with the following objectives. First, to analyze the implementation of policies and strategies for state asset management in Indonesia currently, as well as to identify key constraints and challenges in its implementation in order to evaluate effectiveness and seek improvement opportunities. To examine the main factors that influence the effectiveness of the state asset management in supporting the optimization on non-tax revenue. To evaluate state asset management strategy for increasing state revenue in supporting fiscal sustainability and Indonesian economic development. This research is expected to fill the research gap, theoretical gap, and phenomena gap that contribute to developing more adaptive and responsive policies towards challenges in state asset management. Ladies and gentlemen, the theories employed in this research consist of public policy theory as the grand theory, state finance theory and good governance theory as middle range theories, highest and best use theory, and asset management theory, along with relevant previous research as implemented theories in this study. The presented conceptual framework systematically outlines the relationship between public policy theory, state finance theory, and good governance theory, and the highest best use theory in supporting optimal state asset management to enhance state revenue. First, state assets that have not been optimally managed serve as the starting point of analysis. Second, state finance theory, good governance theory, and highest best use theory is provide strategic approaches. 3. The good governance theory approach is used to integrate theories that direct asset management function within government structure that are transparent and accountable. Distinguished guests and fellow colleagues, this research employs a qualitative method approach with secondary data analysis based on systematic literature review and group discussion based on focus group discussion. To obtain in-depth understanding regarding the state asset management and factors that influence its effectiveness in the context of public policy. Secondary data was obtained from official reports, academic publication, and government policy, and as well as reports from international institutions. Data collection through systematic literature review using Harsings published or Paris resulted in 310 articles. The article selection and analysis producers were conducted systematically using the Prisma diagram. After applying the Prisma flow diagram, 35 articles were selected for in-depth analysis. Of these, 5 articles were excluded due to their purely conceptual or theoretical nature, and through fewer 30 scientific articles were obtained ready for analysis. The systematic review of 30 relevant articles shows that distribution of research methods, namely 50% of researchers are most interested in using quantitative approaches through statistical database analysis to evaluate causal relationship between variables. 43.3% of researchers conduct their research using qualitative approaches, particularly to explore institutional barriers, legal constraints, and potential system reform in state asset management. Mixed methods that combine the advantages of quantitative and qualitative analysis were only used by 6.67% of researchers. The variables examined by these researchers are classified into independent variables and dependent variables, covering the main themes of the analysis research. The researchers are most interested in independent variables that are most frequently analyzed, namely asset management and government expenditure. The most frequently studied dependent variables are economic growth and asset optimization. The discussion results from the systematic literature review provide several key points that reflect pattern finding and research gaps. First, effective asset management has been proven to directly drive asset optimization with positive impact through strategic measures. 2. Government expenditure in strategic sectors, namely health, infrastructure, and education, has significant impact on economic growth. 3. Regulatory reform and asset management system reform play important role. Ladies and gentlemen, primary data was collected through focus group discussion, and within the context of criteria, 8 key informants were selected with category, managers, users, academic, and auditor. These 8 informants were selected based on the relevance of their roles in state asset management and supervision, as well as their background with state asset management issue. Subsequently, data was processed in analyzing using NVivo software. From the analysis result, an aggregate hierarchy was obtained to see which nodes are most dominant. In aggregate, there are 17 nodes with the highest hierarchy, having the largest contribution in the overall hierarchy, both in terms of number of references and data sources. Overall, 4 categories of informants stated that the non-tax income node dominance are at 88%, the utilization scheme node at 75%, which shows that asset utilization schemes become one of the strategic solutions that are widely discussed. The next 2 nodes, public-private partnership and idle asset, each recorded 63%. The data integration and overlap function nodes, its contribution 50%, demonstrate the dual technical and governance dimension in asset management. The comparative summary presented groups the comparison based on the 4 main categories, where each category is analyzed from the perspective of its objective, purposes, and role within a broader context. The comparative diagram analysis reveals consistent thematic similarities across various informants categories, encompassing, first, orientation toward efficient asset utilization integrated with productivity and oversight aspect. Second, urgency for comprehensive data integration that enables transparency and evidence-based decision-making. 3, need to implementing adaptive and responsive regulatory framework to economic dynamic. And 4, the recognition of state asset potential contribution to non-tax income as a sustainability alternative revenue source. All categories acknowledge that the significant potential of state asset to generate non-tax revenue streams, representing a paradigm shift toward viewing public asset as strategic revenue generators rather than merely administrative resources. The causal relationship pattern formed between the main element of state asset management illustrated a complex and structured interactive network where the optimization of public goods function is influenced by the implementation of high-access and best use in principle. The success of this system is highly dependent on human resources capacity in operationalizing the system, which is in turn determines the overall effectiveness level of state asset management. Distinguished guests and fellow colleagues, the NVivo analysis result provide deeper initial insight into state property management, demonstrating the identification of complex relationships between various key factors that influence the effectiveness of management strategy. The first key factor concerns implementation of state asset management in Indonesia. There are 9 challenges that influences the implementation of state asset management, namely, first, primary function of state asset in public service. Second, idle of or underutilized asset. Third, pricing structure issues for commercial asset. Fourth, critical role of regulation in state asset management. Fifth, limited end user expertise. Sixth, role of state asset management institution. Seven, institutional transformation. Eight, insufficient data completeness. 9, state asset governance and regulatory challenges. The second key factor concerns is factors influencing asset management effectiveness. There are 6 factors impact asset management effectiveness. First, administrative barrier limiting management flexibility. Second, insufficient expertise and management personnel. Third, regulatory risk and investment barrier in state asset development. Fourth, misalignment between asset planning and procurement. Fifth, complex management schemes. 6, significantly poor state asset management performance. The third key factor concerns state asset management optimization strategy for supporting state revenue. 8 strategies have been identified to increase state revenue potential through state asset management. First, idle asset optimization without compromising core function and selectivity principle. Second, utilization schemes. Third, enhancing management expertise. Fourth, importance of consumer pricing flexibility. Fifth, maximum potential asset utilization. Sixth, strategic partnership of asset utilization without compromising public service function. 7, state asset transformation into business entities. And 8, optimization strategy supporting economic stability and social welfare. Distinguished guests and fellow colleagues, the conclusion consolidated principal findings incorporating the challenges, opportunities, and strategy identified through this research. First, state asset management in Indonesia confronts complex structural and challenges, with primary issues stemming from systematic inefficiency in government asset utilization. Second, the absence of comprehensive coordination mechanism and systematic approach impedes maximum asset management effectiveness. 3, the lack of accurate and integrated information system that serve not only as comprehensive asset identification tools. 4, an integrative approach constitutes an essential prerequisite for optimizing state asset contribution to non-tax state revenue, emphasizing intersectoral collaboration. 5, comprehensive strategy requiring implementation focusing on technical conversion of non-productive asset function. 6, implementing tariff flexibility and cost structure optimization via PPP mechanism strategically transform state asset potential. Policy implication designed to enhance optimal and sustainable state asset management categorized by implementation feasibility. First, enhancing transparency and accountability in state asset management. Second, data integration and digitalization of asset information system. 3, the role of ELMAN in asset optimization. 4, strengthening human resources and institutional capacity. 5, systematic implementation of the highest and best use principle. 6, risk-based public-private partnership. And 7, regulatory simplification and legal framework strengthening. The policy recommendation is the government must integrate good governance principle across all state asset management process, strengthening regulation and deregulation in state asset management, particularly regarding tariff flexibility and cooperation with private parties. Intensive training programs that encompass the application of highest and the best use principle, information technology mastery, and risk analysis, as well as providing incentive in the form of professional certification in asset management, supported by leadership commitment and organizational commitment. The last is a comprehensive and up-to-date national asset information system, digitally based, must be immediately developed that includes idle asset identification, real-time asset status monitoring, and database optimization strategy formulation supported by interagency data integration. My closing, strategic state asset management drives non-tax revenue optimization and national development. Through transparent application of highest best use principle, we convert challenges into opportunities for sustainability growth. Thank you.